No, I went into Star Wars on Force Awakens as a Puppeteer consultant, and I was there for 16 months on that whole movie. And then as we were working on sort of R&D for how we would put performers back into the movies, because J.J. Abrams very much wanted to make a sequel to Return of the Jedi as if it was 1985. And that involved guys in rubber suits, people running around with big heads on, and just doing practical effects. He really wanted it to feel like the original movies. Whereas maybe the prequels didn't feel so much like that because George was pushing the digital technology very, very hard at that point. So we were doing R&D for things like the Lugger Beast and the Happerbore, big creatures that were running around in there, and we were working out how we could put performers into that. And during that time, little designs were coming through for a thing I think that was called Snow Girl or Snow Globe at the time. And
that's what I heard.
That turned out to be BB-8, and I did some very early tests with a gentleman called Josh Lee, who is BB-8's dad. He's the engineer who kind of came up with how that would work. So we did some very quick little tests with a puppet about this big against black, and then we showed it to JJ. JJ went, "Great, go do it." And then that's where it all started. And then other members of the team came on. You had Matt Denton, who's a genius animatronics programmer, Giles Hannigan, who sort of works with Josh as an engineer, and then myself, and I brought on Dave Chapman, who's my partner in crime and great friend, to work with us on BB-8. So that team put all that together, and now I'm sitting here talking to you.
It's the dream, right?
It certainly is. Well, living the dream is a very overused term.
It is.
But I did say to Dave at one point, I think we were out in the desert, and we'd been shooting for a few weeks, and I said, if I wake up and this has been a dream, I'm going to be so annoyed. So luckily we're still here. I'm still having that dream. I may be in the hospital somewhere, I don't know.
In terms of consultants on BB-8, I had Ben Schwartz and Bill Hader in terms of bringing to life the voice of BB-8, or I guess the sound.
Yeah, I mean, Ben and Bill, I think they both said very, very publicly they went in and did stuff, but they're positive none of the stuff wound up in the movie.
Gotcha.
They went in, they tried to do it. I did hear a track that was put down, because I used to do the voice on set. So I do the noises before we knew what the noises were. And the first time I ever heard BB-8 speak was when I saw the movie.
Okay.
I mean, oh, that's what you sound like. So now when I do it, Daisy will ask you questions and I'll go, I'll do that so she knows what she's talking and when to speak. But Ben and Bill, they were there doing various voice tracks of it speaking English, so that the sound guys would then get a feel for how those lines might be delivered. And I think it was a combination of the work they did and Matt Wood and his genii up at Skywalker Sound. I think it was a big combination of all of that stuff put together. And so everybody that was involved in that big stew got their piece of recognition for it.
Matt Wood actually was at the first Nickel City Con, which was really cool to have him come here.
Who was, sorry?
Yeah, he was here. This is year 4 for Nickel City Con.
Sorry, I hope I missed you.
Matt Wood.
Matt Wood, Matt's great. Yeah, Matt, General Grievous himself.
He does everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's kind of
amazing. He's in the office. He's like, I'll do that.
It's insane because he seems super down to earth for being.
Oh yeah, he's great. He's great.
So important and so prominent.
Yeah. Well, the best people are. So you meet people that are really, really, really famous or really, really sharp at what they do, and they just get on with it.
Have you worked closely with him on various points during the trilogy?
No, I mean I see him at things like this. No, I don't. All his work is done in post. So we make these things, and then we go, there, have that. Right. And all the geniuses at ILM get stuck in the Skywalker Sound and the editors and everything like that. So it's always amazing. You'll do a scene with a droid in the back of an X-wing in a big green room, and then you go, okay, I wonder what that's going to look like. And then you cut to it in the film, and there's stars and ships and explosions, and it cuts. The excitement happens. You're often delivering with I'll be feeding Oscar beeps, and he'll be talking backwards and forwards to BB-8, and you go, okay, I know I've read the script, so I know what's going on, but until you really see it, and everybody's John Williams has got stuck in. And they've done all the magic afterwards. It's an amazing thing to go along and see, because I do get to go along and see these films as a fan. So you don't know exactly what happens. I mean, I know I've read it, but there's also bits I just don't go and see, like the lightsaber fight in the forest in The Force Awakens. I went onto the set. That was a man-made forest. I walked around, went, that's great, and they started to shoot, and I left because I wanted to see the movie.
Oh man, I'd be so tempted otherwise.
Well, you can. I mean, you can. I mean, also, filmmaking is a desperately dull process as well, because you can say it over and over again for a day, and you're not sometimes quite sure how it's all going to cut together, or even if it's going to cut together in some cases. I mean, not with Star Wars, but with other films, you go, really, is this going to work? And sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. But you stand by to wait for most of the day. You know, so you it's just boring, you know, but it's equally, it's boring on Star Wars, so it's great. So yeah, I like to go along and see them, because I was a fan, I've always been a fan. I was a fan in '77 when the first one came out. And so to have been involved in it slightly would have been a big deal, but to get to do the little robot and carry on through 5 of these things, it's just been completely brilliant.
I can only imagine. I mean, so when you've been a fan since, like you said, just 1977,
yeah.
Do you ever think that you get to have a small piece of that pie one day, to be
No.
a part of that, to be a part of that legacy?
No, it was because it was done. It was over. We've made 6 and that we wasn't going to do any more. And so you thought, well, okay. I mean, there was a few things when I got into puppetry, I blundered into puppetry, and I thought, well, I'd like to write a TV show that I worked on, which I did. I'd like to do some stuff with the Muppets, which I did, and I'd like to work on a Star Wars film, which I didn't. And I said, well, I got to do Prometheus, and I did Hellboy 2. You go, well, that's kind of cool. I got to do an Alien film. That's all right. So 2 out of 3 is not bad. And then they came back round and we went, oh, maybe we can get on this. So we all started sniffing around. And then, so, as I say, I told you the story about how I again blundered into it. And so yes, I've been very, very lucky.
Yeah, and it's been great work. I think BB-8 has been an extremely popular droid, needless to say. But like when you have the likes of 3PO and R2 throughout the decades.
Well, absolutely. It's because they are so iconic. You know, R2, 3PO, and Chewbacca to me were they were the big boys, and you know, when I was a kid. So we had that scene in The Force Awakens where C-3PO, R2, and R2-D2's catatonic in the corner, and BB-8 goes and speaks to him. And we shot that for quite a while, and JJ was really sensitive to that relationship between R2 and 3PO. And the stuff you didn't see that they cut from that, and C-3PO talking to R2 who won't wake up. And that was all quite lovely stuff. And I was aware that it was like being invited to join Laurel and Hardy for the day, because I was getting to work with icons of my childhood. And I didn't take that lightly at all. And Anthony Daniels is an absolute scream to work with. I really like him, because what I think a lot of people don't realise about him is he's playing a fully rounded comedy character with no face. He can't see. You know, his work is so difficult and so brilliant. So I think C-3PO is a very, very underrated character. And I think he's just done an amazing job. And again, it was lovely to work with him and become friends with him, because I think the world of him is great.
So Anthony Daniels did an interview at Star Wars Celebration just last month, and he talked. Actually, this was Alan Tudyk's interview, but Alan Tudyk was talking about their relationship off screen, and he said, in short, just before Rogue One, like Anthony Daniels, it was at the premiere, and he wanted to. He's like, "I'll give you my notes afterwards," kind of thing. And Anthony Daniels meets up with Alan Tudyk, and basically he said the only thing was he came in for a hug and he whispered in my ear, "F you."
Alan didn't have to wear the suit. However, Alan did have to walk around on stilts, use animatronic hands, which were not easy. He had a whole, and he used to walk around in that awful costume, that awful grey onesie thing, and I've worn those, and they're no fun. So, but it was interesting that Alan managed to bring so much of his own personality, and again, it's something without a face. But at least K2's eyes move as well, because you could do a lot with that. And again, the animators got stuck in and just did an amazing job. I mean, we had a practical K2 that they would roll in for lighting reference, so that the ILM could see where the light would fall, where the shadows would be, various things like that. And then they would take that out. And it was all Alan. He just did an amazing job. But they didn't have to bolt him into a tin can every time.
That's true, and I understand Anthony Daniels was a little salty about that.
Absolutely, yeah.
He
didn't mean it, but he's good fun.
And back to how iconic BB-8 is, I think K2 is almost not quite, just being the one movie, but like people revere like K2 as their favorite
Yeah,
Star Wars
I mean,
droid.
the Star Wars has got a history of bringing in, very human droids into every movie, which is really lovely. So you had L3 coming as well for Solo,
Right.
and they'd always bring up with BB-9E or Dio now, as we've just seen him at Celebration. So they always like to bring up a new one.
Yeah, I think they all have unique personalities as well, which is kind of something that is difficult, especially like you said, Anthony Daniels is kind of strapped in there. What else could he do? And even to a point, R2, with Kenny Baker over the years. There's a definite personality for each of them.
Yes, exactly. I mean, R2 is just, in my opinion, he's a foul-mouthed plumber.
That's very true.
He's what he is. He's knocking around this English butler, and it's like, how does this work? But it's absolutely brilliant. Yeah.
It's a good thing it's all just beeps, because he's probably swearing half the time anyway.
Well, if you ever met Kenny, that's probably true. The R2, people say about BB-8 being so expressive because the difference between R2 and BB-8 is that R2 did most of his acting in the sound edit with Ben Burtt's stuff, because Kenny had very limited movement in that. So if you rock that thing backwards and forwards and put happy beeps over it, you've got a happy performance. But if you take those happy beeps off and you put angry beeps on, you've got an angry droid. So you can play around with it in the sound, and again, with what Ben Burtt and now what Matt would do, I think it's very underrated. Because if you notice it, it's not working. And so they've managed to bring those characters, especially R2, to life with that language they put together. BB-8's a little bit more expressive because his head moves. So you can cock his head when he's being inquisitive, you can make him look sad, you can make him look shocked. You can do all that kind of stuff with it, and then you add it onto that, the stuff that Matt does, and it brings a much more informed character.
There's an interesting dynamic with BB-8 too, obviously with how he's built. So he could, R2's kind of set on a direction, 3PO is basically like a humanoid, and BB-8 can go in any direction. And I remember when the trailer for Force Awakens dropped, that Mark Hamill went to Twitter and said, "Hey everybody, no, that's a practical effect," because everyone was like, "There's no way it is."
Yeah, I mean the internet got very salty for about 12 hours when they first saw BB-8. They're like, "Oh, Disney have made another toy commercial. This is all CGI." They said they were going to do it practically. That shot that was in the first teaser trailer was me running through the desert, pushing the thing after the camera car. And it was about 58 degrees. I mean, it was hot. It was Abu Dhabi. I was in a green nylon suit for visual effects purposes. And it got so hot that they would give me a vest that you could put ice into, which is great when you first get it on, it cools your core down. But then when that ice melts, you end up with 2 pounds of water you can make tea with. And you think, well, I can't get off set to get this changed, and then you just walk around with warm water.
Quite uncomfortable.
Yeah, exactly. So for a little while we thought, oh no, we're talk about Ahmed Best showing up at Celebration this year and getting the hero's welcome he absolutely deserved. But we thought, with an Jar Jar, we're in so much trouble. And then Mark came out and said, "Oh no, that's a practical effect." And then suddenly people went, "Oh." And then the early drawings of R2-D2 that Ralph McQuarrie did, where R2 doesn't have legs, he's got a ball under the tube. That was his original concept for it, so it would tool around. And so suddenly went, "Oh, well, Ralph McQuarrie came up with that idea really early. Oh, we like this now." So they kind of changed their they changed their tune on it quite quickly. But then they rolled the one out at Anaheim, and people just lost their minds. And then eventually it came out. The actual story behind it was that there are 7 different versions of him in the original movie. There's up to about 9 different versions now. But there are remote control ones. There are practical puppet versions. There are animatronic ones that just don't roll particularly, but they just do expressions. And there's one we fling about.
I imagine at different times you guys maybe face some challenges, especially in being in the environments that you were for pushing BB. Like, what were some of those challenges? How do you overcome them? Like
sand
Sand comes to mind.
I mean, I don't know if I've got any guys who've served in here, but running on sand's no fun. And especially if you're running on soft sand and hard sand and you hit a patch of soft, you're going over. Admittedly, I wasn't carrying full pack and a weapon, so I'm just pushing the thing around. But that was very difficult. It did get very, very hot. The guys, Matt and Josh, had terrible trouble with the glue melting. So the glue that kept all the vinyl on the outside of the panel, that would just stop the lift. And once that lift, the sand gets in. And so then you've got glue for the sand. The animatronics, they have trouble keeping those cool. They had to keep me cool. They had to open up the panels all the time, hoover it every night. That sand gets everywhere, as Anakin said, sand gets everywhere. And yeah, so that was a big challenge. We also, the stuff we shot in Puzzle Wood in Wales, where Kylo Ren is chasing Rey around, which is the beginning of that kind of sequence when he captures her. That was a real location. And we got hit with some really heavy rain. And it's an old Roman tin mine, and there were like 20-foot ravines everywhere. And they'd taken all the safety rails out because there's no safety rails in Star Wars. I don't know why anybody didn't tell the guys who built the Death Star that. But, so there was sheer drops, and it was mud. So, and I'm pushing this thing around, and if you try and stop suddenly, you're going to slip. So that was fairly dangerous. But you're very well looked after. You've got a stunt team there all the time. Sometimes they'll clip a harness on you. When we were out doing Last Jedi, we puppeted the porgs as well. There were 4 of us who puppeted the porg puppets. And there was a point where we were on a cliff, and we were all bounced on, because if you went, that was it. Straight down onto rocks.
A little scary.
Yeah, it was, but equally, they have the best safety teams, so you just know you're not going anywhere. You trust your health and safety team, and they'll just look after you. There's a shot in The Last Jedi where Daisy's Rey is feeling the power of the Force on the island, and there's a shot of a nest, a porg nest, and the mother covers up the babies, and that is a practical shot. I wasn't there. I got to stay on the main bit, but they actually took the guys out onto this kind of weird needle, and there were 4 of them out there, and the camera was on a great big crane that went out, and I wouldn't want to be out there for £1 million. There was a very, very serious drop onto some very, very jagged cliffs.
Yeah, I can imagine any scene that would have been shot, for Last Jedi, especially on Octo for the island there, would have been just kind of crazy with all the cliffs and danger that you would see.
The Thalasiren and the sea cow, the big milky fella. Again, practical and on location. And Neil Scanlon's team did this amazing thing where they went out, found the location they wanted to do. They digitally scanned the rocks. They took that and made a model of it, a full-size model of it back at Pinewood. And then they built this thing. They built a frame that the creature could sit on. And I think you'll see on the documentary, Neil says the only way we can get this thing out here is with a helicopter. So they built the Thalasiren in 2 parts. They helicoptered it out. They built this massive walkway down to this really remote location. And the rocks were really sharp as well. One of our puppeteers who was doing the head, he actually sat on the rocks for a while, got up, and they cut his jeans. So he had a great big slit across the back of his jeans. He didn't hurt himself. He was like, oh, he just had 2 slits across the back of his jeans. And there were 2 guys who worked with us a lot, a guy called Tom Wilton, a guy called Derek Arnold, and they've been with us all the way through. And these 2 guys worked as a kind of a double act, and they glued them in. They put them in the belly. There was another guy on the head, there was a guy on the animatronic face. I think there was 6 or 8 guys working on that one, but Tom and Derek had to be glued in there for about 8 hours. They were given all the facilities they needed. You can make it that way you like. And they just put them in there with a radio and a knife and said, if you've got trouble, guys, come out through the front. But they were monitored, everybody was fine, but that was shot as you see it out on, it was all sort of the Dingle Peninsula. So a lot of it wasn't on Skellig Michael Bay, it was all that area. You could see Skellig from a lot of the locations. Like the village, the caretaker village was a real set. There was a set at Pinewood as well, but and they counterlevered it off a mountain at the side of this cliff. We lost a day's filming because a cloud rolled in. I thought, this is a bit foggy. One of the guys said, oh, this is a cloud. And we were that high up, this cloud just sat there, so we were all just sitting there in this mist looking out, getting wet. But yeah, it's because of glamorous filmmaking.
I imagine too, with Skellig Michael, anything shot there was, like you said, a cloud could essentially ruin a day. You have to reset after maybe a rain scene, things like that. And I think in Last Jedi extras they showed when Mark Hamill kind of uses the Force on that hut that Daisy Ridley's in, like that's all like actually like bricks flying back or set flying.
It was all on wires, and it was some crazy stuff.
You had to get that right, otherwise reset.
3-hour reset. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, absolutely. It's pressure on absolutely everybody, on the effects team, on the actors. Everybody's got to get their part. I mean, I've never been a sports player. Never been a fan of sports. But filmmaking and musical theatre for me are the two closest things to team sports you're ever going to get, because everybody's got to get their bit right at the same time to get to the objective. So, you know, it's a massive, massive team.
I can only imagine. In just a moment, we are going to open the floor up to questions for Brian. You can stay right where you're at and just raise your hand if you do have a question, and we'll kind of call on you just one by one. So if you want to formulate those. But the porgs. So just as you said, kind of BB-8, when we first saw BB-8, that was a hot topic of conversation. The porgs were definitely a hot topic.
Oh yes, they certainly were, weren't they? They upset a few people, the porgs.
They did, but they're so adorable.
Well, yeah. I mean, once people saw them, they went, oh, okay, they're fine.
Yeah.
But as I said at the time, the people were like, oh, these are like little kids. And I said, yeah, you know, we really need to get back to a blue elephant playing the piano with his feet. Remember when Star Wars was for grown-ups and sensible? I think that a lot of people have forgotten that. I mean, I was 7 when the first one came out, and they were made for kids. And they're still fundamentally made for kids, but now they're for kids of all ages. And I think, you know, the porgs, and I know this for an absolute fact, because the amount of kids who come up to the table and just wax lyrical about the porgs. And so they're in there for them. You know, hopefully, you know, we're putting things in there for all, you know, every kind of generation of Star Wars fan. But they were a lot of fun to do.
That's the thing, right? Like, you grow up with it. So you don't stop loving it. You grew up with the original trilogy. I kind of grew up around the prequel trilogy. Always loving the originals, but like now kids are growing up with the sequel trilogy.
Well, what I think is wonderful is you're seeing 3 generations come to these things, and you've got, you know, people who, like myself, their kids and their kids, you know, that just have each taken something from the films they're getting at the time they're getting them. And what I'm really enjoying is seeing little girls turn up, you know, dressed as Rey or whoever else, you know, and Jin Erso and those characters. And it's now becoming far more inclusive, and I think that's can only be a good thing.
And your shirt also says
absolutely
for everyone. So I think you kind of spoke to that, and that's where I was going next. You know, it's great, and I feel like Star Wars brings a lot of people together. Whether you like, maybe you just like the Clone Wars or Rebels, or you love one particular movie,
or even if it's the Forces of Destiny for little kids, or Rogue One, you know, which was aimed way higher. I just think it's great that it's still going, and that they're coming up with some really interesting stories to tell. And you know, everything's not going to be for everybody, but equally, you know, we just see what happened with Game. I've not seen any of the new series of Game of Thrones. I understand people are a little salty about it,
just a little bit,
but. We went through all that 2 years ago, and you know, because I always say, you know, no one hates Doctor Who like Doctor Who fans, you know, or Star Wars like Star Wars fans, or Game of Thrones like Game of Thrones fans, and it's just everybody gets so invested in it, and that's a really good thing. But I think it is important to remember there's other stuff, you know, and just everybody likes something about each and every thing about it, you know, each and every aspect of the fandom. And the other good thing to remember is, if you don't like this one, there'll be another one along soon.
That's right, a whole other trilogy coming. There are 2 actually.
Exactly.
So we are going to start right here.
Hello.
We were talking at the table earlier. I was asking, how difficult was it, like, being in big suits and puppets?
Yeah, I've done a lot of work in animatronic heads over the years. The first big one I did was Hellboy 2, and the heads themselves, they're tricky. Sometimes you can see straight out of them if your eyes happen to be where the creature's eyes are, and that's quite good. You can rarely hear anything because they're animatronic, and those things are full of tiny servo motors, so you get zzz all the time whenever it starts to work. And sometimes you can see out of the mouth, which is great until they close the mouth, because nothing walks around like that. So the mouth's always closed, it's difficult to get air. You've usually got someone in your ear telling you you're on camera, or stop walking, you're about to fall off the edge of something. If you're really lucky, you get a video tab. In the thing I did in Hellboy 2, which if you've seen Hellboy 2, there's a troll market where they go looking for, they meet Wink and they're looking for the princess and stuff. And there's a squid thing cutting the heads off fish that Abe Sapien gets frightened by. And that's me in this big head. And I had tiny video goggles inside the suit, so I had a picture of what the camera could see. So you can position yourself. And as a puppeteer, you generally work over your head with things like the Muppets, so that the camera cuts off there, and then you look down and you can see what the camera sees, so you can act within the frame. And I was lucky enough to get that in Hellboy, so I could kind of make my eye lines correct to match the frame. But oftentimes you're blind and deaf, so you have somebody in your ear just telling you where to go when you're on camera, when to stop. Just talking to you generally, because you get complete isolation in there. So you just kind of get a really good relationship with the people you're controlling, and hopefully they then trust you. I was working on Rogue One, I'll tell you this quickly, working on Rogue One with a guy called Kieran Sharp. Now Kieran is this big, and he's been in dozens and dozens and dozens of movies. He was in Ewok in Return of the Jedi when he was quite young. He was in Raiders of the Lost Ark. You know the guy who comes in and poisons the dates? Little guy? That's Kieran, okay? He's been like dozens of movies. And I was in his ear for Rogue One. He played this little kind of thing with a squid face that is in the cell with Jin early on. But we shot a scene out in Jeddah, in the Jeddah scene where the attack comes. And I had to go, because Kieran's so small, you need line of sight on whoever you're looking after. And if he was to walk behind the chair, he'd vanish. You're like, oh, okay, I need to be out seen. So I went way up high at the top of the set, so I could kind of see down and see where he was at all times. And one of our guys came along, and to talk to him, I usually have a microphone, and I normally clip my microphone under my hat, so that way it stays the same distance from my mouth all the time, and it keeps it out of the wind, and it just doesn't bother him so much. And a guy came past, he knew me from the first time, and he went, "Oh, Brian, what are you puppeting today?" And I've got remote control. So I've got Kieran down there. He's just in that little squid face thing. So, "Oh, what's he doing?" I said, "Well, look, I've got the thing here, and I've got his face, and the face is all monkey." And I've got the eyes here, and you can't see it blink. But Kieran's listening to every word I say, and I know he can hear every word I say. And I said, the other thing is, if I push this one up, his right arm goes up. And I pushed the joystick, and Kieran just went... I said, "But knock it down," he goes back down. And this is the left arm here like this, and he did this. And then he put it down. I said, "If I waggle them both, he waves." And I did that. And the guy went, "You're amazing, you lot," and he walked off. And he honestly thought I had full control of Kieran.
That's a great story. Yes, you were in the back, sir.
Was there a scene where they did a CG BB-8 that you wish you could have puppeteered for them?
There is a lot of CG BB-8. So the scene in the Falcon where he's going around in the corridor and land on the ground and all that stuff with the wires, that's all CGI. BB-8 is every single tool in the box because there are things that we just can't achieve practically. So when we can't do it, CG take over. But what tends to happen is we will put a reference performance through, like Alan Tudyk's practical K2, so they can see how it would roll through the sand or how it would, like the bit where they're running away from the TIE fighters on Jakku, and you see them and there's big explosions behind them. That's CGI, because it's more cost effective and easier to put a CGI BB-8 in front of a practical explosion than it is to remove me from a practical explosion. So, and also there's health and safety issues sometimes. So there are a lot of, we do CGI stuff, but I've normally walked through it all first in one form or another. So I always quite like it when you see him just do crazy stuff. Although BB-8 coming down the stairs in The Force Awakens, that's real. And they told me I'd never have to do stairs. Don't worry, you'll never have to do stairs. And we had a look at the set, and I said, "You sure I'm going to get these stairs? I'm not going to have, no, you're never going to have to do stairs." And so I show up 2 days later, and I'm like, "Yeah, JJ just said, can you just go down a couple of the stairs?" And he told me. We tried stairs. He can't get down normal stairs because his body's too big. But these were it's a big raked kind of spiral staircase, and the steps were quite big. So we had to come up with a really fast way of how he would come downstairs. We decided that he doesn't like stairs because he's round. So we went, well, he kind of comes, when like little kids, when they're just learning to walk, they bum shuffle sometimes, they come down on their backsides. He does that. So if you go back and look at that, he's checking out every step. He's going, "Oh, I don't like this. I don't like it." And so you see him bump his way down the stairs. And so we were originally only going to have to do 2 or 3. And then JJ would go, just do a couple more. Just go back a bit further. Go back a bit further. 15 steps. It's about 25, 28 pounds, something like that. And we'd shot that a good 2 dozen times. And it was getting heavy by the end. But that's practical. So yeah. So for the most part, again, it's every tool in the box. So it's rare that I go, "Oh, I wish I'd done that." There's one shot that I thought I'd done and I hadn't. when you first see, when she first gets BB-8 and they're walking off into the distance, and then Iris is down to the Star Destroyer. Well, I'd done a reference for that, and I thought I'd shot it, and then a guy came up to me at conventions, and we were chatting away, and he worked at ILM, and said, oh, I did the shot where you're walking away. And I thought I'd done it. I mean, it's that good that, you know, they just do an amazing job. And actually, I mean, we can tell the difference between all the different versions of BB-8 and what we used, and I can tell that each one behaves slightly differently. But hopefully you can't, and that's the point.
I don't, thank you.
Okay.
I can't believe that's practical. Going up the steps, man. It's
It
incredible.
just took me out.
Jeez. Yes.
How does it feel that you know that you're a part of Star Wars?
It's amazing. I mean, it was something that I'd always loved as a kid, and there's a thing I said earlier, even to be slightly involved in it would have been, you know, something else, but to do a character that will outlive me, and to have it be able to line up next to things that I loved as a child, be it Chewbacca, Yoda, you know, R2 and 3PO, and still be part of that same, you look at them and you go, oh, you're part of the same story. Just an amazing thing. And you know, and when you go to work on the Millennium Falcon, you just like, look at this. And we do still, Dave and I still just sort of look at each other every now and then and go, this is great, isn't it? So it's fantastic.
Yes, sir.
Do you have a favorite moment that you filmed with somebody like Daisy or Oscar?
We very much enjoyed the first scene where she finds BB-8, because that was actually, we shot the film pretty much chronologically, so that was really the first time Daisy and I had worked together properly. And so we sort of, you know, we did her in the droid bond, and, you know, we got on very well during that movie, so that was a nice scene to do. I really enjoyed the scene where John Boyega, Finn is trying to get BB-8 to tell him where the base is. Yeah, this thing. That was nice. That was a nice one to play as well, because that was all done practically except for this, which is ILM doing their thing. Yeah, I've enjoyed it. We had a lot of fun. There's not a lot of it in the movie. We had a lot of fun where BB-8 comes back in The Last Jedi and Poe finally sees him again. Because I always maintained that BB-8 was Poe's dog. What that relationship was. Because if you look at it, it's like he sends his dog off on a mission. There's a stray dog. She finds the stray dog, takes the stray dog home, and then the dog gets his master back. You know, that's how I always look. Because it's so small, I always kind of looked at him as a cross between a toddler and a terrier. So that's kind of, for me, that's where I sort of base his character. So yeah, it was nice when Billy comes back and gets him and he, you know, grabs his head and stuff. That was fun too. But they're all very, very nice people to work with, and they really appreciate there being a practical character for them to work against.
Any other questions for Brian? Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Did they give you any input into the animated cartoon when they put BB-8 in it?
No. I know that they looked at how we did it and how it behaved, but no, they had all the footage they needed, so they didn't really get us involved.
Yes.
Just one last question. Do you have anything to me?
No, go on.
Yeah,
Okay. Did you have anything to do with the Yoda scene in Last Jedi? I was just curious.
I didn't, because I was doing BB-8, so I couldn't get out for the rehearsals. But Dave Chapman, who's my partner in crime on that, Dave was Frank's right arm, and then two other guys who do with also the Paul team, Colin and Damien. They went and worked with Frank very closely for quite a while just to get all that all right, because Frank is a real perfectionist, and they worked with him. That was a real labour of love on everybody's part. I got to go up and look at it. I got to go up and see it and sort of talk to Frank and stuff, and it was quite a magical moment.
Thank you.
You were mentioning you did Muppets, which stuff?
I've worked with Muppets on and off. When they come over to the UK to make their bigger movies like Treasure Island or Most Wanted, what they do is they populate their extras with, you know, local talent. So I've gone in with them. I've done a couple of Muppet-based projects for the UK as well. There's been a show like Muppet Top Shot, which you guys never would have seen here. I think called The Who's, I think, which went out of Sprout. So I've worked with the Muppet Workshop a few times. So when they come and do PAs, they'll bring UK guys to work in with their principal performers. So you come in and you right arm for them, or do extra characters when they need you. So that sort of like PA stuff, that sort of thing.
Any other questions for Brian? Yes.
So you were, to call back to what you were talking about with R2-D2 and acting without a face, what are some things that we could like look at and go back and look at with a more critical eye that really impressed you of other puppeteers working?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. Say sorry, did I?
I can speak up.
Oh, please do.
So, calling back to what you were talking about with acting without a face and how difficult that can be. What is some work of other puppeteers that has really impressed you that we could go back with a more critical eye and watch?
Well, Yoda. Frank's work on Yoda was just stunning because the performance itself was just wonderful. I mean, the puppet was great, but the core of Frank's performance in that wisdom in that crazy little package, which is why I always find that the Empire Strikes Back one works so much better for me than the digital one. Because as soon as he started leaping around, I kind of didn't really get on board with that. But again, not aimed at me. The speech about luminous beings, that's just Frank just really acting his arse off. Excuse me, but it's just so good.
Yeah.
Doug Jones, who is now in the Star Trek movie, it's a new Star Trek series, who wears the makeup, the really tall guy. Doug stuff in Hellboy, and he did an episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I think it was called Silence or Hush, I can't remember, when no one spoke, and he was one of the thin men in that. Doug is an amazing physical performer. Who else do we know? Well, Jim Henson, go look at Kermit. For me, one of the ultimate puppet performances is Kermit sitting on a log with a banjo. I mean, it breaks me every time I see it. It's fantastic. Frank is great as well. I mean, there are a lot of really good stuff. The Gremlins as well. I mean, they were great. Those practical Gremlins in the first movie. I mean, the second one too. But just the Gremlins in that bar, and that's just so many guys. And the great big collaborative effort of Little Shop of Horrors, the original movie, not the original, sorry, the musical version of Little Shop of Horrors that Frank Oz directed. And when you think there's 25 to 30 puppeteers under there all pulling cables to make that thing work. And do you know how they shot that?
No.
Because if you go back and look at it now, they shot it in slow motion. So Rick Moranis is doing all his own singing to himself. So he's singing to a track of himself, which is significantly slowed down because the puppet couldn't move that fast. So they were shooting it at about 10 frames, 5 to 6 frames a second. So they're all working in slow motion. When you look at it and you know that, you go, there's something not quite, there's a really odd quality to some of those musical numbers. And it's because it's been sped up. But it's a stunning piece of feat of filmmaking when you realise it's been shot in slow motion. So go back and have a look at that.
Thank you.
Just kind of wrapping things up here with looking forward, BB-9E. What have you learned from BB-8 that maybe you were able to apply to that? Because
I didn't do it.
Oh, you didn't do
I
BB-9E?
didn't do BB-9E, no, because I was in the bin.
Oh.
So BB-9E was done by Matt Denton and Dave Chapman.
Okay.
So because Dave and I, we split the functions of BB-8, but because so I get the head forwards and backwards and this side to side, and Dave turns it left to right, so he controls where it looks. And he's got to nail his eye line, so he's always sitting over there at the monitor, just looking at remote control. And because he didn't have him looking left and right because he was behind that grill, I was in the green suit with the rods, pushing the thing around, pushing the bin about, and trying to be funny. And Dave was running ahead on BB-9E with Matt. So Matt and Josh, they took the version of BB-8. There's a trike version that's got wheels on the back, it's got a drive motor, and they employed that to do BB-9E, and they just removed the wheels afterwards. So it was exactly the same as BB-8, and it ran the same way. But that was Dave Chapman and Matt Denton.
Fantastic. Well, everybody, Brian Herring is going to be upstairs at his booth, Photo Ops.
Yeah, I'm booth C7. I'm up next to the mighty Tony Todd, which is a great experience.
That's a good one to be next to.
Oh man, he's great. He's nowhere near as scary as I thought he was.
So autographs and pictures which you can purchase. But everybody give a nice Buffalo welcome and round of applause to Brian Herring.
Thanks guys.
Enjoy the rest of the weekend. Thank you.